The gunshot rang out across Willow Creek like a crack of thunder, echoing through the dusty streets and sending Elizabeth Watson's heart plummeting to the pit of her stomach. Rebecca Willis dropped to her knees in the dirt road, watching helplessly as her father collapsed in front of the bank, blood seeping through his shirt. Rebecca's anguished scream pierced the afternoon air of the small Montana town as she crawled toward him. "Papa, no." Her trembling hands pressed against his chest, trying to stop the bleeding, but even as the town doctor came running, she knew. She had seen death before too many times. Willow Creek, Montana Territory, 1878. A town that had promised a fresh start after so much loss, now stained with more blood. "There wasn't anything to be done," Doc Adams said quietly, standing beside Rebecca at her father's freshly dug grave 3 days later. The bullet hit his heart. Rebecca nodded numbly, her blue eyes hollow as she stared at the simple wooden marker. At 24, she had buried more loved ones than most people twice her age. Her mother, taken by fever when Rebecca was 16. Her brother James, lost in a mining accident 2 years later. Her fiancé Thomas, thrown from his horse and killed just weeks before their wedding day the previous spring. And now her father, shot during a bank robbery by the notorious Hawkins gang. "What will you do now?" Elizabeth asked, placing a gentle hand on Rebecca's shoulder. Rebecca's fingers tightened around the deed to her father's general store. "The only thing I can do," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "I'll run the store, it's all I have left of him." The following weeks passed in a blur of inventory, ledgers, and forced smiles for customers. The store became her sanctuary and her prison. Each morning, Rebecca would unlock the front door, dust the shelves, and try to ignore the memory of her father doing those same tasks for the past 3 years since they'd arrived in Willow Creek. Summer faded into autumn, and with it came the cattle drives. Ranchers from the surrounding territories brought their herds through on their way south, and the town swelled with cowboys, trail hands, and the business they brought. One cool October morning, Rebecca was arranging a display of canned goods when the bell above the store door jingled. She didn't look up immediately, finishing her task before turning. "Good morning. Can I help you find something?" Her practiced shopkeeper's greeting died on her lips as she took in the man who had entered. He stood over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered and lean-hipped in dust-covered denims and a faded blue shirt. His dark blonde hair curled from beneath a well-worn Stetson, and a week's worth of stubble shadowed his strong jaw. But it was his eyes that caught her, a striking hazel that seemed to shift between green and gold in the morning light that streamed through the windows. "Morning, madam," he said, removing his hat. "Need to stock up before we head out. Trail supplies for 6 men. Rebecca nodded, finding her voice. "Of course, I have everything you might need. Flour, beans, coffee, salt pork, and tobacco," he added with a smile that creased the corners of his eyes. "The boys get mighty ornery without their smoking tobacco. I have that as well." Rebecca moved behind the counter, pulling out a ledger. "If you'll give me your list, Mr. Keller, Brendan Keller." He extended a calloused hand. "Foreman for the Circle T Ranch." Rebecca hesitated before accepting his handshake, surprised by the warmth that spread from her fingers to her wrist. "Rebecca Willis, I own this establishment." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, or curiosity. "Pleased to make your acquaintance, Miss Willis. I was expecting to see John Willis. He's usually running this place when we come through." Rebecca's face stiffened. "My father was killed 3 months ago, bank robbery." Brendan's expression softened with genuine regret. "I'm sorry to hear that. Your father was a good man, always fair with his prices even when supplies were scarce." "Thank you." Rebecca withdrew her hand, suddenly aware she'd been holding his for too long. Now about those supplies. For the next hour, Rebecca gathered Brendan's requested items, carefully noting each in her ledger. He moved around the store with her, carrying the heavier sacks and creating a small mountain of goods on the counter. "That should do it," he said finally. "How much do I owe you?" Rebecca tallied the figures, her pencil scratching across the paper. $27.40. Brendan counted out the money without argument, surprising her again. Most trail bosses haggled fiercely over every cent. As she wrapped the smaller items in brown paper, she found herself asking, "Where are you driving your herd this season, Mr. Keller?" "Down to Cheyenne, then on to Denver. Weather permits, we'll be back through here in about 2 months' time." He hesitated, then added, "Running this place on your own must be difficult." Rebecca's spine straightened. "I manage just fine, Mr. Keller." He raised his hands slightly. "No offense intended, Miss Willis. It's just that it's a big store for one person." "It was my father's legacy," she replied simply. "I won't let it fail." Brendan nodded as if he understood completely. "Well, if you're still here when I pass back through, I'll be sure to stop in again." "The store will be here, Mr. Keller," she said, her chin lifting slightly. "As will I." He smiled then, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I don't doubt that for a moment, Miss Willis." After he left, Rebecca found herself standing at the window, watching as he loaded the supplies into a wagon parked outside. There was something about him, a quiet strength, perhaps, that lingered in her thoughts for the rest of the day. That night, as she closed up the store and climbed the stairs to the small apartment above, she chided herself for such fanciful thinking. She'd had enough of losing people. The last thing she needed was to take an interest in a wandering cowboy who'd be gone with the next herd. Yet 2 months later, when the bell above the store door jingled and Brendan Keller stepped inside, his hat in his hands and snow melting on his shoulders, Rebecca couldn't deny the leap her heart gave at the sight of him. "Mr. Keller," she greeted, fighting to keep her voice neutral. "I see you made it back before winter set in completely." "Just barely," he said, stomping his boots on the mat by the door. "Got caught in that storm coming down from the north, lost 3 days waiting it out in a canyon." He looked around the store, which was festooned with holly and pine boughs for Christmas. "You've been busy." "December waits for no one," Rebecca replied with a small smile. "Not even wayward cowboys." The corner of his mouth twitched upward. "Is that what I am, wayward? Aren't all cowboys?" "Here today, gone tomorrow." Something in his expression shifted. "Not all of us, Miss Willis." Their eyes met for a long moment, and Rebecca felt a warmth creep into her cheeks. She turned away, busying herself with straightening a display of woolen mittens. "What can I help you with today?" "More supplies for the trail, actually," Brendan said, coming closer. "The trail's done for the season. We brought the herd in. I'll be wintering here in Willow Creek." Rebecca's hands stilled. "Oh, I didn't realize. The Circle T has property just outside town." "Mr. Turner, that's the owner, he asked me to stay on and help with the breeding stock." He paused. "So I reckon you'll be seeing more of me if that's all right." Rebecca turned to face him, unsure why her heart was beating so quickly. "The store is open to all, Mr. Keller." "Brendan," he said. "Please call me Brendan." "Brendan," she repeated, the name feeling strange and familiar all at once. "Was there something specific you needed today?" He seemed to hesitate, then pointed to a shelf behind her. "Coffee, and perhaps some of those peppermint sticks. Christmas is coming after all." Rebecca wrapped his purchases carefully, aware of his eyes on her the entire time. When their fingers brushed as she handed him his change, that same warmth traveled up her arm. "Miss Willis," he said before turning to leave, "I was wondering if you might allow me to escort you to the Christmas social next week. I hear the whole town turns out for it." Rebecca stared at him, caught off guard. No one had asked to escort her anywhere since Thomas died. I don't generally attend such functions, Mr. Keller. Surely the store can survive one evening without you," he said gently. "And it's Brendan, remember?" She hesitated, every instinct telling her to refuse. Getting close to someone meant risking loss, and she couldn't bear another. Yet something in his steady gaze made her want to take that chance. "Very well," she heard herself say. "Yes, I would like that." His smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "I'll call for you at 7 then." After he left, Rebecca pressed her hands to her hot cheeks, wondering what she had just done. The Christmas social was held in the town hall, decorated with evergreens and lit by dozens of candles. Rebecca wore her best dress, a deep blue wool that brought out her eyes, with her chestnut hair arranged in careful curls. When Brendan arrived to escort her, his eyes widened appreciatively. "Miss Willis, you look beautiful." Rebecca felt herself blush. "Thank you. You clean up quite nicely yourself, Mr. Keller." And indeed he did, in a dark suit with his hair neatly combed and his face freshly shaven. He offered his arm, and after locking the store door, she took it. The evening passed in a blur of music, laughter, and stolen glances. Brendan introduced her to people she'd known for years, but had never truly spoken with the blacksmith's wife who shared her love of books, the schoolteacher who had just moved to town, the sheriff's deputy who promised to keep a closer eye on the store at night. "You've made quite an impression in a short time," Rebecca observed as they shared a cup of punch. Brendan shrugged. "I like to get to know the people in any town I stay in, makes for better neighbors." "And how long do you plan to stay?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. His eyes met hers. "I'm not sure yet, depends on a few things. Such as whether I find a good enough reason to put down roots." The music changed then, a slow waltz that had couples moving to the center of the room. Brendan set down their punch cups and extended his hand. "May I have this dance, Miss Willis?" Rebecca hadn't danced since Thomas. The thought of being held in someone else's arms had been unimaginable. Yet now, looking at Brendan's outstretched hand, she found herself nodding. His arm slid around her waist as they joined the other dancers, holding her just close enough to guide her while maintaining a proper distance. He was a surprisingly good dancer, leading her confidently through the steps. "Where did a cowboy learn to waltz?" she asked, looking up at him. A shadow crossed his face. "My mother taught me before she died, said every gentleman should know how to dance properly." "She was right," Rebecca said softly. "I'm sorry about your mother. It was a long time ago, I was 12. His hand tightened slightly on hers. "My father wasn't much for raising children on his own. I left home at 16, found work with cattle drives." "So you've been wandering ever since?" He looked down at her, something unreadable in his eyes. "Until recently, yes, but a man gets tired of moving on eventually." The music ended, but they remained standing close together, neither wanting to break the moment. Finally, Rebecca stepped back. "I should check on the store." Now, disappointment was evident in his voice. "I always check in the evening after what happened to my father." She trailed off. Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Of course, I'll escort you." The night air was crisp and cold as they walked the short distance to the general store. Fresh snow crunched under their boots and their breath fogged in the moonlight. Rebecca unlocked the door, lit a lamp, and made a quick circuit of the store, making sure everything was as she had left it. "All secure?" Brendan asked when she rejoined him at the door. "Yes," she said, extinguishing the lamp. "Thank you for understanding." "Your caution is sensible, not something to apologize for." He paused. "Would you like to return to the social?" Rebecca hesitated, then shook her head. "I think I've had enough excitement for one evening, but thank you for a lovely time." He nodded, disappointment flickering across his features before he masked it. "May I see you home safely then?" "I live just upstairs," she explained, gesturing to the apartment above the store. "But you're welcome to walk me to the door." At the foot of the stairs that led to her apartment, Rebecca turned to bid him good night, but the words died in her throat at the intensity of his gaze. "Rebecca," he said softly, using her given name for the first time, "I'd very much like to call on you again if you'll permit it." She should say no. She knew she should. Every person she had ever loved had been taken from her, yet the thought of pushing him away caused an ache in her chest that surprised her. "I would like that," she whispered. His smile was gentle as he took her hand and raised it to his lips. "Good night, Rebecca Willis. Sleep well." As winter settled over Willow Creek, Brendan became a fixture in Rebecca's life. He would stop by the store several times a week, sometimes to make purchases, sometimes just to talk. He began helping her with the heavier tasks, moving crates, stacking firewood, fixing the leaky roof that had troubled her since autumn. The townspeople noticed, of course. Elizabeth Watson, Rebecca's closest friend, teased her mercilessly about her handsome cowboy. "He's not my cowboy," Rebecca protested one afternoon as they shared tea in the back room of the store. "He's just a friend." Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. "A friend who looks at you like you hung the moon and stars. A friend who happens to arrive just in time to help you close up almost every evening. Rebecca Willis, that man is courting you whether you admit it or not." Rebecca stared into her teacup. "I'm not sure I want to be courted, because of Thomas, because of everyone." Rebecca set down her cup with a sigh. "My mother, James, Thomas, my father, everyone I love dies, Elizabeth. I can't go through that again." Elizabeth reached across the table to squeeze her friend's hand. "Oh, Rebecca, you can't think like that. What happened to your family was tragic, but it doesn't mean you're cursed. Doesn't it? What would you call it? Bad luck. Horrible, unfair bad luck." Elizabeth's voice softened. "But refusing to live your life won't bring any of them back, and I think your father would want you to be happy." Rebecca pulled her hand away. "I am happy. I have the store. I have my independence." "And you have a good man who cares for you," Elizabeth persisted. "Don't throw that away because you're afraid." That evening, when Brendan arrived as the last customer was leaving, Rebecca found herself studying him with new eyes. He hung his coat by the door and immediately went to stoke the fire that was burning low in the store's pot-bellied stove. "Cold night," he commented, adding another log. "Snow's coming down harder now." Rebecca nodded, watching the firelight play across his features. "Brendan, may I ask you something?" He straightened, dusting his hands on his pants. "Of course." "Why do you come here every day?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. "I thought that was obvious. Humor me." He took a step toward her. "Because I enjoy your company, Rebecca. Because talking with you is the best part of my day." He hesitated, then added softly, "Because I care for you more than I've cared for anyone in a very long time." Rebecca's heart hammered in her chest. "I care for you too," she admitted, "and that terrifies me." "Why?" "Because everyone I care about leaves me." Her voice broke on the last word. Understanding dawned in his eyes. He closed the distance between them, taking her hands in his. "Rebecca, I can't promise that nothing bad will ever happen. No one can, but I can promise that I'm not planning on going anywhere." She looked up at him, vulnerability written across her face. "How can you be sure? Your whole life has been about moving on." "Not anymore," he said firmly. "I told you before a man gets tired of wandering eventually. I've found a reason to stay." Before she could respond, he leaned down and gently pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was brief, tender, a question more than a demand. When he pulled back, his eyes searched hers. "I should go," he whispered, releasing her hands. "It's getting late." Rebecca nodded, unable to form words as she watched him retrieve his coat and hat. At the door he paused. "I'll see you tomorrow." "Yes," she managed. "Tomorrow." After he left, Rebecca pressed her fingers to her lips, feeling the ghost of his kiss and the stirrings of something she had thought long dead hope. February brought with it the harshest weather Willow Creek had seen in years. Blizzards swept down from the mountains, burying the town in snowdrifts higher than a man's head. The store remained open, a lifeline for those who could reach it, but business slowed to a trickle. One particularly brutal night, as Rebecca was about to close up, the door burst open, bringing with it a swirl of snow and Sheriff Miller's deputy. "Miss Willis," he said, stamping snow from his boots. "There's trouble. Riders spotted heading this way, looks like the Hawkins gang." Rebecca's blood ran cold. The Hawkins gang, the same outlaws who had killed her father. "Are you sure?" "Sheriff, certain. They hit a settlement 20 miles east yesterday." He glanced around the store. "We're gathering everyone at the town hall. It's more defensible. You need to come with me." Rebecca shook her head. "I can't leave the store." "Miss Willis, please, no. This store is all I have left of my father. I won't abandon it." The deputy looked frustrated but didn't have time to argue. "At least let me help you secure the place before I go." Together, they barricaded the doors and windows. As the deputy prepared to leave through the back door, Rebecca asked, "Has anyone told Mr. Keller at the Circle T?" Sheriff sent a rider out there earlier. Mr. Turner and his men are on their way to help. The deputy hesitated. Miss Willis, please reconsider coming with me. I'll be fine, she insisted, showing him the shotgun she kept behind the counter. My father taught me how to use this. After the deputy left, Rebecca extinguished all the lamps except one small one in the back room. She checked the shotgun, making sure it was loaded, then settled in to wait. Hours passed. The wind howled around the building, rattling the windows in their frames. Rebecca's eyes grew heavy, but she forced herself to stay awake, listening for any sound that wasn't the storm. Then above the wind, she heard horses approaching. Many horses. Her heart pounding, she moved to the front window, peering through a crack in the wooden shutters. Through the swirling snow, she could make out dark figures on horseback moving down the main street. 6, maybe 7 riders. Rebecca's fingers tightened around the shotgun. She wouldn't let them take her father's store, not without a fight. The riders were nearly to the store when shots rang out from further down the street. Rebecca watched as the horsemen wheeled around, returning fire at unseen opponents. More gunshots, more shouting. Then, through a break in the snowfall, she saw him, Brendan, on horseback, leading a group of armed men. Her breath caught in her throat as she watched him fire at one of the outlaws, who tumbled from his saddle into the snow. The remaining gang members scattered, galloping down side streets with Brendan and his men in pursuit. The gunfire faded, then stopped altogether. Rebecca remained frozen at the window, straining to see through the snow, desperate for any sign of Brendan. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Then, finally, the sound of a single horse approaching. Rebecca rushed to the back door, shotgun ready, and called out, "Who's there?" "Rebecca, it's me." Brendan's voice strained but alive. She threw open the door to find him slumped in his saddle, his coat dark with what she instantly knew was blood. "Brendan," he half fell from the horse, and she caught him as best she could, helping him inside. "What happened? Where are you hurt?" "Got shot," he said through gritted teeth. Sighed. "Not too bad." Rebecca helped him to a chair in the back room, then quickly barred the door again. When she turned back to him, he was attempting to remove his coat. "Let me," she said, setting aside the shotgun and helping him out of the blood-soaked garment. His shirt beneath was stained crimson along his right side. "We need to get this off too," she said, already working on the buttons. He hissed in pain as she eased the fabric away from the wound, a deep furrow along his ribs where a bullet had grazed him. "Stay here," she ordered, though he was in no condition to go anywhere. She quickly gathered clean cloths, a basin of water, and the bottle of whiskey she kept for medicinal purposes. "This will hurt," she warned as she poured whiskey over the wound. Brendan's jaw clenched, but he made no sound beyond a sharp intake of breath. As Rebecca cleaned and bandaged the injury, she asked, "The others, the gang, 2 dead, the rest got away." His eyes, clouded with pain, met hers. "One of the dead was Joel Hawkins, the one who killed your father." Rebecca's hands stilled. "You're sure?" he nodded. "Sheriff confirmed it. He won't hurt anyone else now." A weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying seemed to lift from her shoulders. "And your men, all fine. Minor injuries." He attempted a smile that turned into a grimace. "I was the only one careless enough to get shot." Rebecca finished bandaging his side, then helped him into a clean shirt she found in the store's inventory. "You shouldn't ride back in this weather, not with that wound." "Trying to keep me around, Miss Willis." Despite the pain, there was a warmth in his eyes that made her breath catch. "I'm trying to keep you alive, Mr. Keller," she retorted, but there was no heat in her words. "Rebecca." He caught her hand as she turned away. "I'm sorry I scared you." She looked down at their joined hands. "When I saw you out there, facing those men who had already killed once, I thought." Her voice broke. "I thought I was going to lose you too." Brendan's fingers tightened around hers. "You didn't, and you won't." "You can't promise that," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "No one can." "Look at me." His voice was gentle but firm. When she met his gaze, he continued, "I know you've lost too many people, I know you're scared, but I swear to you, Rebecca Willis, I'll live long enough to love you always." A tear slipped down her cheek. "Don't make promises you can't keep." "I keep my promises," he said simply. "And I promise you this, I will do everything in my power to stay by your side for as long as you'll have me." Rebecca stared at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, the love that shone there so plainly it took her breath away. And in that moment, she made her choice. She was tired of letting fear dictate her life, tired of pushing away happiness because it might someday end. She leaned forward and kissed him, pouring all her fear, hope, and newfound courage into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, she said, "I'll hold you to that promise, Brendan Keller." "I'm counting on it," he replied, a smile spreading across his face despite his pain. They spent the night in the back room of the store, Rebecca dozing in a chair beside him, waking every hour to check on his wound. By morning, the storm had passed, and with it, the immediate threat of the Hawkins gang. Sheriff Miller came by early, confirming what Brendan had told her. Joel Hawkins was dead, and the remaining gang members had fled, unlikely to return after losing their leader. "You've got yourself a brave man there, Miss Willis," the sheriff said, nodding toward Brendan. "Rode out in that storm without hesitation when he heard the gang was headed this way." Rebecca glanced at Brendan, who was sitting up and looking better despite his injury. "Yes," she said softly, "I believe I do." Spring came early that year, melting the snow and bringing new life to the valley. The Circle T Ranch flourished under Brendan's management, and the general store prospered with Rebecca's careful stewardship. By April, Brendan had moved permanently into town, renting rooms above the blacksmith shop. He still helped at the ranch during the day, but his evenings were spent with Rebecca, either at the store or walking along the creek that gave the town its name. It was on one such evening, with wildflowers blooming along the banks and the setting sun painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, that Brendan dropped to one knee before her. "Rebecca Willis," he said, taking her hand in his, "I've loved you since that first day I walked into your store. You're the strongest, most courageous woman I've ever known." He pulled a small ring from his pocket, a simple gold band with a single pearl. "Will you marry me?" Rebecca looked down at him, at this man who had broken through her walls and taught her to hope again. "Yes," she whispered, tears of joy spilling down her cheeks. "Yes, I will marry you." They were wed in May, in a small ceremony at the church with the whole town in attendance. Rebecca wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved for all these years, and carried a bouquet of wildflowers. Brendan, handsome in a new suit, couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked down the aisle. "I love you," he whispered as she reached his side. "Always. Always," she echoed, believing it with all her heart. The town hall was transformed for their wedding reception, decorated with spring flowers and lit by lanterns. As they shared their first dance as husband and wife, Rebecca looked up at Brendan, marveling at how much her life had changed in less than a year. "What are you thinking?" he asked, spinning her gently. "I'm thinking about fear," she replied honestly. "About how close I came to letting it rob me of this of us." His arm tightened around her waist. "But you didn't. You were brave enough to take a chance. Because you were brave first," she said. "Brave enough to promise me forever, even knowing how afraid I was of losing you." "A promise I intend to keep," he assured her, "for a very long time." "I believe you," she said, and realized it was true. She did believe him, believed in their future together, in the possibility of lasting happiness, even in a world where nothing was certain. 1 year later, Rebecca stood in the doorway of the general store, now Willis and Keller General Merchandise, watching as Brendan carefully placed their infant son in the new cradle he had built. Benjamin John Keller, named for both their fathers, was barely a month old and already the light of their lives. "He's finally asleep," Brendan whispered, stepping back from the cradle. He moved to Rebecca's side, slipping an arm around her waist and pressing a kiss to her temple. "You should rest too." Rebecca leaned into his embrace, feeling the solid warmth of him. "In a minute, I just want to enjoy this moment." Brendan followed her gaze to their sleeping son, then looked around the store they now ran together at the home they had built. "It's a good life, isn't it?" "The best," she agreed, turning in his arms to face him. "And do you know why? Why? Because I stopped being afraid to live it." She rose on tiptoes to kiss him. "Because you taught me that loving someone is worth the risk, always." Brendan smiled down at her, the same smile that had first captured her heart. "Always," he agreed, sealing the promise with another kiss. Outside, Willow Creek continued about its business, growing and changing as the years passed. But inside the walls of the store, Rebecca and Brendan Keller had found something timeless, a love strong enough to overcome fear, to heal wounds, to build a future neither had dared to imagine before finding each other. And that, Rebecca knew, was the greatest gift of all.